guys, to give you guys the best news, the right news at the right time. So, without further ado, let's begin. And what am I going to start with today, guys? I'm going to sing you guys a little song. It's more what you're laughing at.
No.
I'm going to sing you guys a little song, but it's more of a rhyme. Water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Where am I? Mainland UK, that's where. Already, guys, okay, in the news now, it's all over about this Thames water thing. And I've done this to death, but I really want to drive this home about the water problems in the UK. We actually looked at some of our very first videos we did, and I identified the water, and I actually mentioned Thames water. Thames water are about to go bust. The government's going to have to move in. It's going to be absolute carnage if your water supply is Thames water. Why am I saying that? Why do I keep repeating myself about Thames water? Because I believe that all other water companies in the UK are being run like this, and Thames water is just a litmus test, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Once Thames water goes under, I reckon all other water companies will go under, and then it's just going to be catastrophic. So guys, do yourself a favour and make sure you've got some water security for yourself and your family. Whether that's going and getting it from bottled water from Asda, getting the means to get yourself to purify and filter your own water, but make sure you've got, some way to sort your own water out, guys.
Right,
okay?
Sean, can you just answer these questions, because there's quite a few coming up with the same thing. Russian ships in Red Sea. Do you think USA and Great Britain had something to do with the 140 people in Russia?
Well, there's two things there. So let's talk about
another one, has Russia sent ships to the Red Sea?
Yeah, so there are. Yeah, so we'll do the Russian attack first. Right. So the question was, do I think that Britain and America had some hand in this incident in Russia? I don't know. I don't know. Is it possible? Yes. What I would say though is, these guys got paid like $5,000 each for doing it. Now, if you think about how much, a cruise missile costs, you're looking at like hundreds of thousands of pounds, and then you have to have the means to deploy that, which is often millions. Then you have to have the manpower to support that. And you're nowhere near as devastating as what this attack was. So what I'm really worried about and conscious about, that this could be, a sign of things to come, because for $20,000, now I know that sounds like a lot of money, but $20,000 really for what just happened, that is cheap. What I fear we could be moving into now is the, a stage of our warfare, like, I don't know, what would you call it? You'd probably call it super isometric warfare, where you use a proxy third nation, a radical, in this case, radical Islamists. You pay them to go and do an attack on your enemy's country. I don't know, when you do these attacks, you've got to think of what's the goal and what you're trying to achieve. Because, killing innocent civilians, you don't achieve anything. You don't. You do not achieve anything killing innocent civilians, unless it's a large bombing campaign and it's from your enemy, because then your enemy's civilian population puts pressure on their political class to stop the war. But in this case, as Islamic State have claimed responsibility, I don't see the
thank you, Kat.
I don't see how that could be the case. So I guess we don't know. It's certainly possible. I saw an interview with Zelensky straight after the incident, and I've made a career on engaging people's opinions and giving my intuition on it. And I can 100% say, in my professional opinion, Zelensky did not know about this attack. Whether that means somebody behind him, somebody higher up than him, somebody in his government planned it, I don't know. But 100% certain, Zelensky had no idea about this attack. And again, just be cautious, guys, okay? Because what I'm worried about now is this escalating to copycats in different places in the world. Here in the UK, we're vulnerable to this sort of attack. Certainly in America, with the amount of weapons on the street, and also mainland Europe. Remember what happened with the Charlie Hebdo incident in Europe. Belgium, all these places are hotbeds for this type of attack. And if it's only costing $20,000 and you're an enemy state, why wouldn't you invest that money in one of these attacks? We live in very dangerous times, guys, okay? So that's my thoughts on it.
9 lucky stars says, are they now blaming Britain for the attack?
Well, so the Russians are blaming, US, NATO, Great Britain. They're not providing any evidence of this. They're not providing any justification or ramification or reasoning behind it. So yeah, they're going to blame who. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, "Never let." And what did he say? Never let a disaster go to waste, or something. So basically, the Russians will now leverage this attack to whatever their ends and whatever their means are. So if they want their Russian population to think it was NATO, then the Russian population will think it's NATO. Remember what I always say, guys, okay? What really happened doesn't matter. The perception of what really happened, that's the thing that matters. So in Russia now, they will be, Russians are blaming Britain, they're blaming America, they're blaming their adversaries so they can get public support behind them. And again, it doesn't really matter at this point who did what. The only thing that matters is the perception of, the perception of it.
Susan Griffiths just put, apparently we haven't got enough weapons to fight Russia. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. It depends what you mean by fight Russia. We haven't got enough weapons. Well, it's ammunition. We haven't got enough ammunition to fight Russia on the scale that Ukraine's fighting Russia. No, but for Russia to get over here and for us to be in a pitched battle like that, then Russia has to take over Poland, they have to take over Germany, they have to take over Czechoslovakia, they have to take over France. So the reality is, the statement is correct, but the reality is that's not really going to happen unless all those countries fall in quick succession. And don't forget, if those countries do start to fall, so for example, say that next couple of months, Russia takes Ukraine, fine. Then they've got to take Poland, fine. Once they take Poland, they've got to take Czechoslovakia. Once they take Czechoslovakia, then we start thinking, oh, right, okay. And then obviously our allies, namely the United States, will then start bolstering our defences like we've done the European defences. So the statement is correct, but it's also kind of misleading because for that to happen, it's going to take a lot of things to happen.
There's a lot of questions coming up here. Germany is trying to find a loophole in NATO's laws so that they can send troops into Ukraine.
Yeah, guys. Sorry, go on.
And another one to do with Ukraine. Do you think British forces will be posted to support Ukraine's fight against Russia in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Oh God. Well. So first of all, British troops in Ukraine next 2 to 3 weeks. British troops are already in Ukraine. It's open knowledge now. Everybody knows that British troops are in Ukraine. What I think will happen, and I said this long ago, NATO troops will move into Ukraine and they'll push up to the Dnipro and they'll fortify the northern border with Belarus. That will release all the Ukrainians to then go to the east. I don't see British troops in open combat with the Russians or NATO troops in open combat with the Russians for quite a while yet. But I do see troops entering this theatre very soon. Don't forget, if you look back through history, well, not even God, it seems like history, but if you look back the past couple of months, what'll happen is, these NATO countries, they'll say, no, we're not doing this, we're not doing this, we're not doing this. And then one of the NATO countries will start saying, well, maybe we should think about it. And what that means is we're going to do that in a couple of months. So, France came out and said they should put troops into Ukraine. So that more or less means that it's going to happen at some point. Guys, it's inevitable. And this Third World War is inevitable. We can't stop it now. Things are in motion that can't be undone. So the next 2 to 3 weeks, that puts us up to, I think it's possible. Yeah, it's certainly possible. Don't forget, this exercise, Steadfast Defender, the troops are already down there anyway on the border. So it would, what you've got to think about is the finances of bringing those troops back when they're going to have to take them back again. So they might say, hey guys, you know what? We've got all our troops here. We've got the logistics here. No point sending them back to bring them back again. Let's just push them in now. I don't know, guys. It's certainly an option. It's on the cards. What we, and the situation in Ukraine will dictate what happens next. Do we have another, or is that it?
Yeah, someone's just asked, I don't know, it's going about that Hydron Collider firing up as well.
Yeah, so people are saying that this large Hydron Collider in CERN is starting on the 8th of April. I can't find anything online, guys. I've gone to the Hydron Collider website and I've looked, and it says they're starting it up on the 22nd to the between the 22nd and the 24th of April. Again, I don't know how, if that's smoke and mirrors.
Rabbit Struthers has put 10th of April.
10th of April, yeah. So people are really concerned about this solar eclipse, and again, I think we spoke about it when was it? A couple of days ago we did a live and we talked about the amount of money that the United States are pushing into this solar eclipse. And for those of you who've ever seen a solar eclipse, it just gets a bit dark. Like, the sun...
They've got FEMA involved.
Yeah, they've got like the FEMA, which is the National Disaster Management System. They've got FEMA involved. And, it's a really big event. And if you've ever been in a solar eclipse, and, I've been in a solar eclipse, it just gets dark for a bit. And it's no darker than like a stormy day when the clouds are on, and that is literally it. So, they're spending so much money, and they're telling people to stock up and prepare for a few days without mobile phone signal and, some really crazy stuff. So I've just, initially I'd be like, yeah, whatever. But because, there's that much effort by the government put into this, I'm starting to think, right, could something actually happen here? Also, the place where there's the last solar eclipse, where the last solar eclipse went over America, and where this solar eclipse goes, it makes a cross, and the town in the middle of the cross is called Rapture. Guys, I'm not making it up. That's real. You can go look at that on the NASA website, okay? That's real. I don't know what it means. I would say just keep an eye on it, and, something may happen, something may not. But remember, we live through all these, these hot cups of nothing. Remember 1999, the .com virus, and all the computers were going to go off, and then 2012 were going to be the end of the world, and nothing happens. But, I genuinely don't know what's happened. It'd be wise just to, keep an eye on it and, make sure you're safe. Did we have another?
Passed over 7 towns called Salam last time, and 7 towns called Nineveh. Oh,
Nineveh, yes.
Yeah.
So Nineveh, as I understand in the Bible, was a town, a city that was destroyed in the book of Revelation. I might be wrong on that, guys. If somebody knows what I'm talking about, because if somebody knows about Nineveh in the Bible, please let us know, because I know it's a significant name.
Sophia says they're wanting to do conscriptions in Italy too now.
Yeah, so I mean, this whole... Well, remember so all European countries will have to do not subscription, but if you want to subscribe to us, guys, we're taking subscriptions and we're giving our subscribers free stuff. So if you want to show some support, give us a subscription, and we try and give you guys free stuff as much as we can. But conscription, totally different thing, guys. We're not going to be sending you off to fight anywhere. We're just going to give you free stuff. However, most European nations will have to do conscription. I said a long time ago that when this conscription thing came out, I said the UK wouldn't do any conscription per se. They'd have a recruitment push. And what's come out most recently? The UK military has now said that you're allowed to have beards. Guys, that is not the problem with the military. There's not a load of young lads sat there thinking, do you know what? I would love to go and fight for my country and protect my loved ones, but I have to shave my beard off, so I'm not doing it. It's absolutely absurd. And the fact that are we running?
No, we're just looking at files.
We are running low, sir, guys.
Somebody called Jane prompted me a bit ago to check your file.
Yeah, we're running low. We need to. Thank you for that, guys. We need to.
Sharon, that's right. I'm seeing more adverts on the TV now for the army, just as Sean said.
Yeah, it's, there's going to be this... the burning season's almost over. There's going to be this mass recruitment drive, but the problem is we've got this woke agenda at the moment in the UK, and young men who you want to join the military are not of that woke persuasion. They're not the guys you want. You don't want the guys who are going to be complaining about, have they got, sustainably farmed tofu in their ration packs. You're going to want the guys who are going to get the job done regardless of the cost. So saying that their new recruitment tool is to let men have beards, it's just absurd.
Laura, your moderator, has just put, just come in this week. It's just coming this week that you can now have a beard in the army.
Yeah. So that's what we was talking about, Laura. And it's absolutely ridiculous, but it shows that the military do understand that they're, dangerously understaffed and they need to recruit more people. But letting young men have beards, first of all, it's not going to change anything. But I don't know where they're going with this. They've gone down this woke agenda, and they're letting, they've got a huge wokery in the military. I mean, what was it? I think it was it it might be a couple of months ago, it might have been the back end of last year. There was the RAF recruitment scandal where the RAF had been told not, so the RAF now have been told not to recruit white men. Now, as I understand, that's racist. Let me know what you think, guys, okay? That's what the RAF were told. So if you're saying you don't want any more white men, where do you go from that? How do you pedal back? You can join and have a beard now. They've done so much damage to themselves, and but what they're going to have to do is get rid of the wokery, start making the military an elitist place where young men want to go and prove themselves. Otherwise, it's just going to collapse, and it's going to be drastically under strength.
Tracy Jane, they will pretend no one joins up and employ the immigrants.
Yeah, we spoke about this before, and I think that's a real option. Now, I've put too much wood on. Yeah, we spoke about this before, especially in America. There's a because the thing in Texas, Operation Lone Star, I think it was. Yeah, Operation Lone. So Operation Lone Star in Texas is basically the Texans. For those of you who are from America, let me know if I'm saying anything wrong. So in America, each state has its own military units, and they're called state troopers. And those state troopers are under the direct control of that state. So what Texas has done is they've militarized their border and stopped anyone coming through their borders. The federal government, so President Biden, said, no, you can't do that. President Biden sent his own military down there to take over, and the Texans said, "No, we're here. You're not coming." So there was a standoff. Now, obviously, Americans are not going. Thankfully, Americans are not going to fight with other Americans.
State Guard, not troopers.
Sorry, buddy, State Guard.
Thank you, John.
So Americans are not going to fight with other Americans. But if the Americans take in, for example, 1 million people who are not of American descent, who are born elsewhere, would those people then go down there and fight? Because they wouldn't identify themselves as American. They would just do what they're told because they're getting paid. And you could have that situation here in the UK. I think it's more, certainly with the military, but I think we have a similar situation in the UK and the police force. As people start to lose faith in the police the police are struggling for recruitment as well. So, the people that are going to want to join the police potentially could be of criminal background or have families who are criminals. And then they've just got, the police is then run by criminals pretending to uphold the law, but really they're just criminals running around. And that's what's really dangerous. And here in the UK, we don't have anything like the Second Amendment. We can only vote and vote in local elections to have our say. So that's the stage where the area that we're moving in, and the speed of this I don't know, but it's a really dangerous time, and the amount of immigrants that are in the UK and that are in America, the numbers are really colossal. Where they're coming from, who's funding it, I don't know. But it seems to me, certainly in this country, and I think in America, not Texas, the government actually want these people to come in, because like where we are in the UK, they could quite easily stop them coming over the water, but they don't do it. And I'm just wondering what the bigger picture is, what the bigger plan for these people is. I don't know.
They're just talking in comments about police. Loads of police officers have criminals in the family.
Yeah.
That's why there's loads of PCSOs as less responsibilities.
Yeah. So the those of you who were asking earlier, the Russians have entered the Red Sea. So for those of you, this Houthi thing, in Yemen, that there's this whole cauldron, and everything is gonna go. It's gonna go parabolic. I want to tie this into what's happening in Israel. So what we'll do is, guys, I'll just read from this. I'll just read from this article here from Bloomberg. I'll just read you the headline. So, Russian Navy warships enter a crowded Red Sea amid Houthi attacks. Russian warships from the Pacific Fleet have crossed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and have entered the Red Sea. The state-run TASS news agency said, venturing into a maritime region plagued by Houthi attacks and crowded naval vessels. Remember a while back, guys, I said you're going to see this asymmetric naval warfare. The Russians don't. The Russian Navy can't stand up to. I mean, it probably couldn't even stand up to the British Navy, and that's a low bar. Certainly not the US Navy. But what you're going to see now, you're going to see this phase of asymmetric warfare, and we've already seen it. We've already. I'm just thinking it now that I should have mentioned it beforehand. You're going to see, because I've said it quite a while. You're going to see attacks coming from shipping containers. Now, ramming them in like that, that's not the way I thought about them used, but of course that's even better, because then you can claim it's an accident. This shipping container that ran into the Baltimore Bridge and that port area, that was the main docking area and export location for the munitions and the military goods that are going to Ukraine. So destroying the Baltimore Bridge by de facto has closed that port down. Now, what the Americans will have to do now, they'll have to reroute those goods to other ports that are already, probably running at full capacity, or at least 90%, because they're private companies and they want to maximize on profits. So that's going to have a lag now on munitions getting to Ukraine, and that's a fact. So who did this? I don't know. Who benefits? Russia benefit now 100%, because Ukraine can't get the munitions from America, and that's the fact, guys. Okay, so remember, as we're moving forward, this to me says why Russia hasn't invested in its blue navy, because they're going to be using shipping containers, they're going to be using civilian vessels to do these attacks. Remember, to be successful, you just have to close down a few key locations. You don't have to have any more these pitched battles in the open ocean, and board each other like the pirates did. Your navy's there to achieve a goal. So what do you want to do? Do you want to have a load of fancy ships that have the best armor, the best radar, the best sonar, the best defense systems, or do you want to achieve your objectives? I think we're going to see more of these attacks, especially with shipping containers. And as we move forwards, we're going to see actual missile attacks coming from shipping containers, and that's where we're going.
Yeah.
Go. Boom. Okay.
Look what the Houthis did without ships. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So look what the Houthis did.
Is this the reason for the bridge in America?
Yes. So are we going to put this on our other platform, Sarah? I think we can.
Yeah, we can.
Guys, we're going to try and put this video on our other platform. So if you've missed it, if you've come halfway, we're going to upload this on our other platform. The link is in the bio. But yeah, Again, I don't know who did the attack in Baltimore. I don't know, any more than you guys. But what you need to look at when you see these incidents, and it's not always clear, but who benefits from this Baltimore bridge going down? The Russians benefit 100% because America cannot ship its goods now to Ukraine. They have to go through another port, so it's going to take time. There's going to be a delay. That means that there's going to be a gap in Ukraine's lethality goods.
Russian ships in the Red Sea, does that mean there will be an escalation from Connor?
Yeah, it doesn't mean there'll be an escalation. I mean, I think it is the escalation. If you think about the First World War, the First World War didn't happen with Franz Ferdinand being shot. Everybody was under tension before Franz Ferdinand got shot. Everybody was buying ammunition. Everybody was bolstering. Everybody was, choosing alliances and drawing lines in the sand. And when Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, that was just the final straw that broke the donkey's back. So this could be one of those instances where this war just starts by accident.
AJ, am I brainwashed by Russian propaganda for believing we're the enemies?
Well, if you live in Russia, you think we're the enemies. If you live in the West, you think Russia's the enemies. The reality is, and from my experience, most, not all, but most, like most people in the West, most people in, I need to go and put the pump on upstairs. Sarah, do you know where the pump is? So top of the stairs on the left is at the bottom there's like a little switch. Guys, Sarah's had to go and put the pump on. Normally it's my job because if you don't put the pump on, all the water comes down the radiators and it goes clink, 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 and then the emergency radiators click on. So what we have to do is there's a pump because my log burner does all the radiators, and the pump will then pump the water around the system, and all the radiators will get warm instead of just the two here. So that's where she's gone. But yeah, so if you live in the UK, if you live in America, if you live in the West, you'll think that the Russians are the enemy. It's all perspective. And remember what I said before, guys. Okay, doesn't matter what the truth doesn't matter to some extent. The perception of the truth is what matters, because that's how people can manipulate people and get people to do what they want. Are the Russians bad? The Russian regime is, it's terrible. The way they run their country, and they really do persecute their people. But we've got our problems here as well in the UK. There's lots and lots of incidents in the UK, in America, where bad things have happened and the government have been complicit on it. So, I think all systems are at fault, and it just depends which one of those systems you want to subscribe to. But what I will say is as well about the Russian propaganda. At the end of the Cold War, when Khrushchev, so for those of you who don't know, the Cold War, the crescendo of the Cold War was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Russia had some missiles on Cuba which were in range of America, and the Russians said they were going to send more missiles down to Cuba. JFK at the time, he said, no, you're not, we don't want any. So he said, okay, well, we're sending our ships with more missiles on. So Kennedy said, okay, well, look, if drew an imaginary line around Cuba, he said, right, if you go anywhere past that line, I'm going to sink all your ships. And the Russians said, okay, you sink our ships, we're going to go nuclear. And then Kennedy said, let's go. So it was kind of you've got these ships now going down across the Atlantic. You had Kennedy, watching, ready to sink the ships. You had the Russians ready to fire the missiles. Here in the UK, people don't know this, but we had the V-Force, the Victor, the Valiant, and the Vulcan. The Vulcan's a beautiful aeroplane. All these aeroplanes, they were on the runway with the engines running and the fuel tanks being filled up. It was the FA Cup final. Nobody knew about this, guys. We didn't get told anything. We were so close to nuclear Armageddon. So the British task was to set off with the aircraft And the British task was just to destroy Eastern Europe. Not, I don't mean a few little towns and cities. I mean the whole of Eastern Europe would have been destroyed. Each aircraft that we had carried more firepower than all the explosives dropped in World War II combined. Just think about that, guys. That's just one aircraft. And then once that happened, the Americans were going to come over and destroy Russia. Guys, we were so close to going out. So the ships were coming closer and closer to Cuba, and at the last minute they turned around and they went back. That was the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and some people say that was the end of the Cold War.
Dad.
The Russians knew at that point that they couldn't take on NATO at force by force. So what they did instead, they started to put an ideological warfare. They started to use ideological warfare, going into schools, going into universities, getting people to think about socialism and getting people to be more open to socialism. Let's not forget, guys, socialism's killed more people than anything. People think that the Germans killed a lot of people in Nazi Germany. Guys, absolutely nothing compared to how many people have died under socialism. So that's how the Russians move forward. And the way they do that, all you have to do is you have to divide society. Okay, right, how do you divide society? Right, you guys are black, you guys are not. Right, they don't like you. And you put money into, for example, Black Lives Matter, Me Too. All this sort of stuff, you just pump money into these groups and you fracture society. Divide and conquer. So that's what's been happening in the West for such a long time. And people don't know that it's happening because they don't see it, because they're too fixated on dealing with their own lives because bills and expenses are too high. So we have a fractured society, and we really need a united society, because if we're united, if we're a united society, we're unstoppable. But a fractured and a divided society, there's nothing there, guys. Okay, so we need to be united.
Cosmic Encounter. I've not seen that. Leave the World Behind. That film. Everyone keeps mentioning that. Emma Jane Taylor. Some say intergalactics will intervene if Armageddon seems imminent. Does that sound too crazy?
Said that?
Emma Jane Taylor.
Emma Jane. I said this a while ago. Right. Okay. So for those military guys who know me, that they've known I've done quite a few things in the space industry, and I still get called into Boeing, the Advanced Manufacturing Park. It's Boeing basically.
Thank you,
and I always say to them, straight up, I say, guys, what's the plan for alien attack? Come on, what's the plan for alien invasion? And they never say anything, and that's kind of anyway. But I always say that to them, and I've said this quite a while. There's lots of incidents where UFOs have been seen around nuclear weapon systems. Nuclear weapons have turned on. Nuclear weapons have turned off. All sorts of wild stuff. So I do agree. I think that could be an option, that aliens are stopping us going nuclear, because there's some really wild stuff about Mars. Mars has an element on it. Guys, if somebody's on the phone now, Google it and find out there's an element on Mars, and the only way you can get this element is through a nuclear weapon, basically. So that is all over the surface of Mars. So there's an argument to say that at some point in Mars there's been a nuclear war, and that could be why there's no more people on Mars, and then the people from Mars had to move to Earth. I don't know what it is, guys, but there is definitely some sort of correlation there between UFOs and these nuclear sites.
Graham Wright put, jets take too long to make and cost too much. Back old Spitfire on bulk. Faster and cheaper. The jets do, and this is the problem at the moment, that the Russians have worked this out really quickly. Jet engines, your expensive missile systems, they take too long to make. They're too expensive. Not that cost's really a factor when you're in a world war. Thank you, Stoney.
But they take too long to make. So the future of these conflicts is glide munitions. So with these drones as well, the drones with the propeller, the engine is the thing that takes the time to produce. And they're just you can't use them in sufficient numbers. So what you need to do is you just need to drop things and glide them.
Thank you, Al.
So that's the future.
Flynn's just said a red heifer was killed yesterday.
I don't believe it. What, the sacrifice? I don't know anything about that.
Thank you, Dan.
So the red heifers, this is one of those things that it's not something I would give any thought to at all.
We're back in Israel now, aren't we? With red heifers.
Yeah, so we're talking about Israel and what's happening over there. So for those of you who don't know, in the book of Numbers in the Bible, it says that to build the third...
29th, Flynn says, 29.
29th of this month?
Yeah.
So that's what I think it's going to be as well on Passover. So in Israel, biblical prophecy says that to build the third temple in Israel, which is what's going to usher in the Antichrist and the Messiah, to build the third temple, you need to sacrifice a red heifer. A red heifer is a certain cow. It's got to be perfect. It can't have a blemish, and it's got to be of a certain age. And again, I was like, oh yeah, really? But guys, and they've got to sacrifice it on Olive Mount, or the Mount of Olives or something, which is across from the Muslim place at the moment. Now, they've really built a temple. There's loads of videos online. People, they're not hiding it. There's loads of videos not a temple, an altar. There's loads of videos online of people going up to the altar and saying, wow, there's an altar right here, a sacrificial altar right here where the biblical prophecy says the sacrifice needs to be. Once this sacrifice happens, they need to... And again, guys, look how absurd this is. We're talking about, we're talking about burnt cows ushering in the Antichrist. But this is what's really happening, guys. This is the world we live in.
Tara's just put, why are we having Israel troops land next week?
In the UK?
Yeah.
I knew nothing about that.
You know that people in Israel is not allowed to take DNA.
So what I would say about the, Israeli troops come to the UK all the time. They use our villages. So in the UK, we've got like 4 that I know of, villages that are made for, teaching how to fight. It's called FIBUA, fighting in built-up areas. So they do urban attacks, and I know the Israelis come over here to use our facilities. It's good for the Israelis. They can use our facilities unimpeded. They can, cross-train with the Brits, so, and that happens regular. That may be it may not, but, I know that happens. Let's go back to the red heifers, guys. So these red heifers, these cows, these sacrificial cows, they need to be sacrificed and burned, and then the ashes need to be made into some sort of purification thing. And then they're going to, build another temple. Once this temple's built then, as per the Bible, this will summon the Antichrist, but it will also summon the Messiah. And guys, I don't know if I'm the Messiah. The more time goes on, I think I could be. It's said in the Bible that the Messiah will defeat the devil with the word of his breath. Now that either means he doesn't brush his teeth or he's very good at talking.
Civil Contingency Act 2004, that's from Daz.
Yeah, I did a video on this. I did a video on this. I think it's in, it really needs updating. So the Civil Contingency Act is basically, what the government's going to do in the case of XYZ emergencies. Now, this was written in, like you said, I think 2004.
Dan nearly doesn't smoke is a picture of Elf.
What I think is really interesting about this is what we've seen from the last 4 years, how incompetent our national government are, but especially our local government. Where we live in the UK, guys, during the crazy toilet roll, masks 6 feet apart time, our local government, or local council, as we say in the UK, they were absolutely terrible. They were not proactive. They were just terrible. So you can only imagine in times of real hardship, they will be non-existent. Because don't forget, wherever you are in the world, your local council, your local authorities, they've got families too. And it's their priority to look after their family before it is looking after your family.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you,
we should all be more self-sufficient, and we should all look after ourselves more and take more,
Thank you, Dan.
Who was he saying? you know, like, again, you just guys, just be aware that we're living at the moment in times of abundance, and these times of abundance are not going to last.
Thank you, Tebsy. Thank you, Dan.
Sorry, guys. Let me just refer back to my notes. Right, guys, we've done guys, this is a good one. So.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, so there's an article that came out today, a couple of hours ago. I'll just read it for you now, guys. Okay. Starmer faces Labour unease over use of Union flag in election campaigns. So let me just read that again. Starmer faces Labour unease over use of Union flag, Union Jack. It's only a Union Jack when it's on a ship. In election campaigns. So basically, people are complaining that Labour are using the Union Jack the Union flag in their in the campaigning material. Yet there was, it's quite okay to put the Palestinian flag on George Galloway's campaign. So where are we going in this country, guys? Are we going in this country where we're having other countries' flags on our own election papers? We live in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and we have a flag. If you don't subscribe to that flag, go live in the country where you subscribe to their flag, and that's totally fine by me. But if you live in a country, you should subscribe to their ideals and their and their way of life. And this thing, guys, where they're saying now, there's some Labour supporters who don't want the Union flag on their material. It's just absurd. And what's really dangerous, and this next election is going to be key, what's really dangerous if we start voting on religious lines, because then this will breed more fanaticism. I used to be one of the security managers in Erbil, which is in northern Iraq. And every time there was an election in Erbil, what I'd have to do is I would have to say to my guys, right, nobody coming into work tomorrow. There's say the election was today. I'd say, right, guys, nobody coming to work tomorrow. Come in the day after. I had to do this because
thank you, Tony.
Whoever won or lost that election, his friends, family, whoever, his guys would drive around shooting everybody up, and and that's what had happened. It was carnage, and this happens in the Middle East, in these less what would you say, in the places that these quite lawless countries, and that's really what happened. And I said, people used to run around shooting each other. Can you imagine if we progressed into this stage in the UK? Don't forget, guys, I've said long ago, we're heading at the moment in the UK, we're heading to a country of gated communities and isolated peoples, and it's terrifying.
We've just had how many gesture eggs will Sean be eating tomorrow?
What's a gesture egg?
Rather than saying an Easter egg.
What's a gesture egg?
It's just another term rather than saying an Easter egg.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay.
Like we're not allowed to say Happy Christmas anymore. It's got to be season's greetings.
Yeah.
Well, I won't be eating any gesture eggs. They'll all be Easter eggs, each and every one of them. Right, sorry guys. Right, we've done the right. So this is one, guys. More's happening in the Falklands. So more stuff's happening in the Falklands at the moment. Argentina have just bought some F-16s through another country. Hang on, guys. Let me just get this right. Yeah. So Argentina have just bought some F-16s through Denmark. So
thank you, Drake.
F-16s would be easy that would make the Falklands easily in range of Argentina. This is interesting because Argentina is in a mass state of recession at the moment. They're having mass austerity. They've got, they're really struggling with their finances. But it's interesting that they've managed to find money to buy new fighter jets. Be under no illusion, Argentina will have another crack at the Falklands because they'll be bullied into it, by the bigger powers. Because if Britain has to fight a war in the South Atlantic again, which it will, that takes Britain out of the fighting map then for Eastern Europe. So it'd be very easy then for, I don't know, Russia to say to Argentina, look, you guys need to start having a go at the Falklands again, so that will tie Britain up. Kind of like Russia is now tied up in Ukraine. Russia can't really take a war anywhere else. They're tied up in Ukraine. So what Russia wants, is Britain to be tied up in the South Atlantic. They'd have to send their ships, their aircraft carriers, they'd have to send a lot of resources down. Again, I say this all the time. Why is the Falklands important? Because whoever controls the Falklands controls Antarctica. There's lots of different bases on Antarctica, but whoever controls the Falklands controls the only place really that you can, that you can land. And we have a post office down there as well. There was a job advert for to become the post office person in Antarctica. I think it came out last week.
Should the UK people be buying gas masks, Sharon? That's from Alex. Alex R.
Well, if you can afford one, yes, why wouldn't you? But gas masks for what is the question? I don't see any credible gas threat. Gas weapons are not really... they're too vulnerable to the wind. The wind blows. They're not really used because they don't really work that well. Nuclear fallout. If you're indoors, it's better than being outside, and if you're indoors, it'll stop most of the fallout anyway. So if you're going to buy a gas mask, make sure it's the one with a rubber seal around your face, because the rest of them are just pointless, and you've got a good supply of filters. If you can afford them, buy them, but I'd say it's not a necessity. Waters is a necessity. If you're going to buy anything, make sure you've got water security.
And how much water should we have per person per day,
3 litres per person per day.
Are we going to be in actual conflict this year from Connor?
Well, I mean, we're in a conflict anyway. We've got the UK troops operating in Ukraine. We've got we've got the naval, I don't know what you'd call it, the naval project, campaign, whatever, in the Red Sea. There's this happening in the Falklands that's just starting to happen. Will the Third World War happen proper and people just accept it's happened this year? I think it's likely. It's likely. It's likely, and if it does happen, it has to happen before November. Remember, I said quite a while ago, I said February is going to be a key month because whatever we see happening has to happen in February. And what we saw in February is we saw this divergence between America kind of not turning its nose on Ukraine, but start talking about not funding Ukraine. And then you had Donald Trump come out and say that he's not going to give Ukraine another penny. And then all the time you've got more people in Europe saying we're going to give more money to Ukraine. So you saw this kind of split. So I think what's going to happen is, UK, Europe are going to deal with Russia in Eastern Europe, and then America is going to have to deal with whoever the next threat is, and that will free them up because America don't want to overextend and be bogged down in Ukraine. They've learned from trying to do Iraq and Afghanistan. Also, domestically, the Muslim population in the UK, if we were fighting a war in the Middle East, for example, the Muslim, population in the UK, there'd be mass protests, there'd be civil unrest, So that's why I think it's happened the way it has. But don't think that Britain and America are not friends anymore. It's just smoke and mirrors. Let me do some wood, guys.
Will there be all-out war where there's going to be a draft? Oh, it's gone. Let me try and pull that down.
Yeah, I don't think that...
Will there be an all-out war where there's going to be a draft also?
Yeah, guys, I don't think there's going to be a draft in the UK. I don't think there's going to be conscription.
This is Arizona. Will there be... Yeah, this is Connor from Arizona.
Oh, Connor, what's it like in Arizona? We were looking at houses on Zillow in Arizona, and they look awesome. Arizona is one of the places we'd like to move, and Texas. Tell me what it's like to live in Arizona.
Amy... What's going on with Poland? Tuss said we are in a pre-war. Also, does France have troops in the Ukraine?
Yeah, so, there's NATO troops in Ukraine, definitely British, definitely American. I don't know, I can only assume there's French troops in Ukraine, but it's not a big thing now. It's an open secret. Everybody knows it. I'd say once this came out and it went mainstream, I'd say all other countries would start, filtering their special forces through. What are they doing? They're looking at location strengths, manpower needs, manpower gaps. They're looking at where they can bolster their forces, and then they'll be having a big command table, and they'll be deciding what the war effort is going to be. At this point, I don't think any combat troops would go past the Dnipro. I think they just saturate Ukraine, and that would free up all the proper Ukrainians to then go fight in the east, or east if you're on that side, that way.
Miss Jem, will the UK have land attacks?
I think I think we said this at the beginning of this video. I think what's really dangerous, what could be really dangerous, is that the attacks that we saw in Russia by, radical Islamists, I think that could start to be replicated, because if all it takes is 20 grand and some grooming online, that's very cheap, and that then becomes on the lines of a cyber attack, where in fact I'd put it in the same category as a cyber attack, because they've done everything online, and you can do these online attacks from far away in the safety of your own home. Let's just go with it for a moment. Say that, this is just me speculating now. Let's just say, hypothetically, that Russia believes that the UK was involved in this Islamist terror attack in Russia. Okay, they'd say, right, we're going to play you at your own game now. So all they have to do is devote $20,000, which is what it costs, and then have some radical, preacher or whatever talk about this, groom some people online, which is how they did it, and then those people could then, execute that attack. And that's really the worrying thing. The days now with social media and and all these encrypted communication application, it becomes very difficult for the security services to track and identify these attackers. I mean, look at the Manchester bomber. He was known to the security services, but they couldn't do anything because they didn't see him as they didn't identify him as a threat.
Marcelo's put, what do you think about the torture of the terrorists in Russia?
Oh God, I don't think they've been tortured. These terrorists who've been captured, they've been I think it's just conditioning. So when you capture someone, they need to be in a certain condition to talk. And I just think it's I call it prisoner conditioning. Don't forget, these guys have just slaughtered and killed a load of innocent people. I don't think anybody should be worried about their human rights, to be honest. That's my opinion, guys. Okay, if you want to go in and do things to innocent people, then you want to wear big boy pants. You got to pull big boy pants up.
Would Russian proxies start offensive on UK interests in Africa and ME?
Yeah, I think there was recently a copper. There was recently a copper. What would you call it? A copper seam found in Congo. Yeah. There was recently a copper seam found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's not democratic and it's not a republic. This copper seam was of a really high purity, and it's got the potential to reset the world balance. So I know that the Russians are sending a lot of putting a lot of resources in to get that copper. I know Britain is operating out there through a Canadian company. So I think in Africa it really is all about resources. So yeah, absolutely that could happen. And I'd say that if that's not happening already. And don't forget, again, these attacks, again, they won't be by state Russian, it won't be by somebody with blonde hair and blue eyes, Yes, of course, I'm going to do attack. They will employ locals to go and sabotage something. They'll employ locals to steal something. You know, that way they've got deniability. But I'm sure that's happening already. You know, I have no doubt that's happening already.
Ultimate 36, why won't Ukraine negotiate with Russia?
Well, you know, it's difficult to ask somebody to negotiate when they've stole a load of your land and killed a load of your people. I don't think either side are sufficiently wounded yet, although they're close, to move into negotiations. Break this down into a smaller microcosm. If your next door neighbour, I don't know, killed your dog and took half your garden, and then people were saying, oh, just talk to him about it, let him have your garden, let him have that bit of your garden, you'd say, you'd be furious, wouldn't you? You'd be like, absolutely not. I want it all off my garden and I want him back 20 feet. So that, you know, so you've got to bring it back to, you know, that, you know, perspective. Also, one of the main reasons this is my personal reason, the peace negotiations at the moment in Ukraine will be pointless because there's that much ammunition, that much weapons, that much, you know, that much firepower in those regions. If Zelensky came up tomorrow and said, right guys, the war's over, we've stopped, they'd still be fighting for another 20 years. There'd still be mining, there'd still be missile strikes. It would go on, you know, it would keep going on. So at the moment, I think any peace talks would be absolutely futile because there's no avenue for peace and neither side want it. You know, the Russians are furious. The Russians want to push up to Poland. The Ukrainians are now being 100% supported by, you know, NATO funding. You know, if NATO pulled their funding, the Ukrainians they'd probably conventionally they'd fall within a week. You know, so that's pretty much why the peace talks at the moment are not really, they wouldn't be worthwhile at all.
Do you think it's too late for de-escalation now from Tony?
In Ukraine? Oh, absolutely. There's no going back now. I mean, don't forget, this conflict's been going on since 2014. You know, they've been fighting since you could argue end of 2013, but really, you know, 2014 when the little green men went into Crimea. So this is not something for the Ukrainians. This is not like a new war that happened 2 years ago. This has been going on now 10 years. Are we on the time thing?
Yeah.
Right, guys, it's been amazing to talk to you guys. We appreciate you. We're looking forward to getting your sample food parcels out to those subscribers.
Thank you, Jake.
Let us know, guys, if there's anything else you want to talk about. Did you prefer us talking on a Saturday rather than a Friday? And thank you for all the gifters.
Thank you,
everyone. Guys are amazing.
Thank you, moderators, as well. They've done fantastic.
See you later, guys.
Bye.